Hey guys, today we're here to learn about checking the facts, a 6-step skill that can help you change your emotions. Checking the facts is a skill from Dialectical behavior therapy, which was invented by Marsha Linehan, PhD. Our emotions and behaviors can be set off by our interpretation and thoughts about an event instead of the event itself. What does that mean? It means that sometimes we add assumptions to the facts and we act from there. Checking the facts is all about making sure we are acting in line with reality and not the reality we are making with the assumptions. This is not a diss. This is just something we all do, or at least a lot of us do, and when we're aware of it, we can change it. Checking the facts is a 6-step process. So let's start with step 1. Label the emotion that you want to change and give it an intensity from 0 to 100. 0 being nothing and 100 being hella intense. Write it down. So for this example, for my example, I'm gonna say I'm angry and I'm feeling it at 80. Step 2. Ask yourself what event prompted this emotion, what happened, who did what, and then write that down. So for my example, we were at work and my boss asked, who's in charge of this project? She goes on to assume that Susie is in charge, and Susie, like the little snake she is, says yes, but we're both in charge. We're both in charge. And Susie didn't say anything because she's trying to be promoted over me. So let's stop and take a second, check the facts, look at what you just wrote down, and you might need to revise. We want to stick to non-judgmental sentences and just the plain facts. No assumptions or your own interpretations. We were at work. My boss came and asked who was in charge. She asked Susie if she was in charge. Susie said yes. We are both in charge. Step 3, ask yourself what interpretations, assumptions, and thoughts are you having about this event? Write it down. So for my example, 1, my boss assumes that Susie is in charge. 2, Susie is a snake. 3, Susie deliberately did not correct my boss. 4, Susie should correct my boss and tell her that we are both in charge. And 5, Susie is just planning to get ahead of me. She's being strategic. This is where we check the facts again. So we're going to write as many interpretations, other interpretations of the event as possible. For me, really what I like to do is at least a 1-to-1. My boss assumes Susie is in charge. My boss asked Susie if she was in charge because Susie was closest to her. Susie is a snake. Susie was just answering a question. Susie deliberately did not correct my boss. Susie was just trying to answer a question as quickly as she could so she could get back to work. Susie is wrong to not tell our boss that we are both in charge. Susie isn't technically wrong when she said yes, and she never said I wasn't in charge. Susie is acting strategically to try to get ahead of me. Susie isn't thinking about getting ahead of me at all. Susie's just thinking about work. Step 4, ask yourself, am I assuming a threat? Step 4A, write it down. Susie is trying to sabotage me. If our project goes really well, she's going to claim all the credit. If it goes really poorly, she's going to blame it on me. Step 4B, think about how probable this threatening event is. Has this happened before with the same people? For Susie, no. Susie has never shown anything but kindness. And she's never done anything like this. Everyone says that she's a team player. Step 4C, come up with as many outcomes as possible with the facts that you know. So for Susie, Susie won't sabotage me. Susie's just working. Susie will give me the credit that I'm due when we're done with the project, whether or not it ends well. Step 5, ask yourself, what is the catastrophe? For my example, the catastrophe will be Susie taking sole ownership of our successful project and being promoted over me. And so step 5B is imagine that catastrophe happening. And step 5C is imagine that you're going to cope well with that catastrophe happening. And the way I'm going to imagine myself coping well is I'm going to imagine myself standing up for myself. You know, I'm going to say, hey, actually, this was a joint project. I'm going to have emails and documents saying and proving that we were both in charge. I'm going to ask my coworkers if this actually happens to stand up for me as well. So it's not like there's nothing for me to do. This isn't a hopeless situation, and I can practice coping that way and feel better about it. Step 6, think about your original emotion and or its intensity and ask yourself if they fit the facts of the situation. You wrote all this down, and at the end, it's really about being real with yourself. For my example, I don't think my anger at an 80 fits the situation at all. I think in this situation, I was jumping to conclusions. I don't actually think there's any proof. There's no evidence or history saying that Susie is actually gonna sabotage me. So I can calm down, you know, maybe I felt really tight, like I felt really angry and my fists were clenched. So I'm going to practice the opposite, palms open. I'm going to relax my jaw. Instead of going up to Susie like I wanted to at the beginning, you know, and read her for filth, I'm just going to politely avoid her, you know, until I fully calm down. If she comes and approaches me, I'm going to be kind to her. Because again, there's no evidence that she's actually going to backstab me, you know, and I can't be acting out of assumptions. Because the thing is, like, I don't want to feel angry if I don't need to be. Why am I feeding something when there's no proof? So those are our 6 steps to checking the facts. Hopefully they were helpful in changing or regulating your emotions. What I want to talk a little bit is about, like, after you do this process and maybe you have some sort of residual feelings. Like, say, I know that I'm jumping to conclusions with Susie, but I also feel like weird. I still don't feel great. Like, something still feels off. So what I can do is reread everything I wrote, and maybe I realize, like, oh man, like, you know, it's not Susie, it's me. I'm very insecure about my position and the kind of authority I hold. And so, oh, it's not a Susie thing, it's a me thing, is a really hard thing to realize, but it's also a really important thing to realize. And that can help you really take away the anger that you're putting towards somewhere where there needs to be no anger and actually get down to the bottom of what's bugging you. You know, now that I realize it's my insecurity, I can work on that. And I'm no longer distracted or bogged down by this anger I had for someone else. That's all, folks. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear any feedback that you have for me. Until next time, I am the Thoughtful Beast. Peace out, guys. Deep it up, boom, bob. Don't know what I'm doing.